Well, good evening, everybody. So I think that tonight is going to be the night that we finally get this portable power station build completely assembled. So let me tell you where we're at right now. At the end of the last video, I had to stop because I ended up ripping out the end of the plug out of the power button for my BMS. I got a new one ordered, and it actually kind of worked out better because the new one that I ordered, the cable length was 3 times as long as the one that came with the actual BMS. So that allows me to actually run the push button out to the front of the power station, so that I don't have to open up the lid to turn it on and off and have the switch bouncing back and forth on the inside. It just makes it a whole lot easier. So to save you guys a lot of very boring time and me a lot of very boring footage, I did not record the hours that I actually stood in front of this power station just staring at it, trying to figure out, all right, does the wire run this way, or does it run that way? Do I need to mount the piece here, or should it be mounted over here? I saved us all the pain and suffering and grief of having to look at all that boring nonsense. So I was able to figure everything out, figure out my cable links, and get everything basically where I figured it needed to go. And then I ended up pulling everything out with the exception of the cells themselves and the fans on the side, I believe. But everything else I took off. The dividers on the inside of the case, I wanted to get those all painted up and prepped. I wanted it to look nicer than just, wood on the inside. So I did that a couple of days ago, let it all sit, dry, and cure. And now we're to the point to where I'm going to go through and try and do a full assembly in this video. So we might end up doing just one final video on this project after this of field tests. But at least in this one we should get the assembly all done to where we can just say, hey, version 1's done. So let's dive on in and put this baby together. I've been waiting for this for a long time. Alright, so here's an example of just how I prepped the BMS side of the portable power station. So you see I painted everything this black. It almost looks like a gunmetal black, which, from the standpoint of the box, if it wasn't glossy, it almost matched perfect. Oh well. It's going to be inside, you're not going to see it. So we've got the BMS mounted on these standoffs to allow for airflow underneath and around. I've got my B- side, which I've bent a bus bar, which is actually going to mount directly to the terminal. And then I'll have my BMS leads. I'll probably end up putting the BMS connections right here just to make things easier so it's not right on the stud. And then the other side of the BMS will come through my meter. And I've got a single post here that will have a connection of the main battery cable going out. And then I will have my my power leads for the meter, one connecting here, one connecting up here to the main positive. This ribbon goes to the display for the meter. And then these two wires right here will go to the relay that is going to be controlled, and I'll show you that when we get to that in a minute. But I just wanted to show you this side before I slide it all into place. Alright, just for a little extra strain and relief, I did put this tie down right here for the leads going to the relay. So it should pull on that and not try and pull them out right out of the PCB. See, I've got a notch right here. That's where I'm going to have all the balance leads coming up from the battery area and over top, and I'll probably stick the excess underneath the BMS and then bring the one ribbon connection right up here to terminate in. Now this was somewhat snug before, and that was before I went through and painted everything. So now, having the paint on there, it should give it that extra little bit of thickness to help hold everything in place. I'm gonna wait till the very end to actually make my final connections to the battery to prevent any accidental oopses from happening, especially being in such a tight confined space. So for the section that comes down and slides in over here, I had to actually space it out a little bit. I didn't want to, but I inadvertently cut holes the wrong way and the wrong spot, and so I couldn't actually mount the charge controller properly. So I ended up just spacing it out a little bit, and then knowing how hot these can get, I did put a piece of sheet metal and I painted it black over top of the plywood, and so the charge controller will sit right on top of it and slide right down. And then I've already got a cable tie for the battery connection. I'll probably put another one over here for the PV connection. Battery will go out this way, PV will come out this way. Alright, so we've got our battery connections and we've got our PV connection. Which I have not terminated the PV lines yet. I'll get to that shortly. But this is what it's going to look like on this side. But before I get this in, I need to get my little distribution box mounted in. So this is a 200 amp distribution block. I find it hard to believe that this is supposed to be able to handle 200 amps. And I don't plan on pushing 200 amps through it. But we've got our negative connection up here, our positives here. We put our positive connections in here, and our negatives are all joined up here. And then we have 6 fused slots. I'm only going to be hooking up the one side right now. You can see the screws removed are the ones I'm going to be using. This came with up to a 40 amp fuse, and so my charge controller is going to be using a 40 amp fuse since it's a 35 amp maximum charge controller. Give it that little bit of headroom. So I'll put a 40 amp in here, and then I don't have a smaller one, so I'll put a 5 amp fuse in for my ventilation system. Realistically, probably a 2 amp would be fine, and I might check and see if I have a 2 amp in the barn. We'll do the charge controller up top with the 40, the 5 amp for the fans. We'll have an extra one currently wired up, and then if I need to down the road for any additional connections, I can always add in, what, four more other fused 12 volt options. You know, we gotta hope that this all works, because I have not fired this all up yet. I just measured the cable lengths. Alright. Let's pull this out so that we don't knock over all our screws. Don't know what I'm knocking over, but I'm knocking something over. That's all in there snug. Okay, let's check our... That's tight. That's tight. Well, my wife got me these little 90-degree Craftsman screwdrivers years ago for Christmas. I think they came in a set. I've found they work great for mounting security cameras because they have the little set screw that you need to adjust, but they also work great for this because I hand snugged these connections, and I can get in here and tighten everything up. The cover goes just like that. And we've got our fuse block positive, fuse block negative. So let's slide this in place. Keep my fingers out of there. Temperature sensor. So here's our PV lines for our solar panels. And there is our fuse block positive. Just put that out there for now too. Well, let's put our battery connections on, I guess. I forgot that I wanted to put a piece of heat shrink on that bus bar. Before I do the positive, I should probably get the negative done, because it's lower. Because I don't trust any accidents from happening. We're going to tape off the end of the negative. Now we're getting into some really tight spaces here. So I have to get the BMS line and the monitor line on here as well. See how long the Velcro stays locked in. Okay, BMS is correct. Alright, I think we can put the top on now. Let's get the AC line run over to the other side, because I know I want that running over top here. When I get the inverter in, I'll show you something that I actually noticed when I was working on that the wiring last time. And then I can probably put the other one in. Back in. I needed to use this to be able to tighten down the main positive. So when I got the inverter test fit for the first time, it was so close to the fan right here that these plugs would not have worked. They would have gone right into the fan. And I had no real movement either way to make it fit. So I picked up one of these 90 plugs with a splitter. It was actually cheaper to get the splitter than to get two singles. So I just got the splitter, and it actually just barely fits. And you'll see, once I put the inverter in here, it's very tight on both sides. But I'm hoping that that's actually going to help a little bit, because it'll help force airflow directly in and out of the inverter. I mentioned at the beginning the wire that I ended up yanking out last time, and then the replacement one that I got was 3 times as long, maybe even 4 times. So that actually gives me the ability to wire it right through to the front here. So before I put the inverter in, Then I just have to remember that this is a locking connector. Guess I need to connect the balance leads. Well, no sparks. That's good. Since I've got it here, let's connect our display. As much as I would like to get rid of the silver, I couldn't. I probably could have, if I got super tedious, if I could have just cut a rectangle and covered the square, the fault, cut circles for the lights, circle for here, and then a rectangle all out of a piece of tape, and then just spray painted all the silver. I could have done that. I still can. It's just going to be tedious, and I might do it. We'll see. But for now, good old Sharpie did let me cover that white. And I do like that look a lot better than that white screaming at me. Folks, we're getting close. Let's grab the inverter, slide that into place. And I just have to be careful. How's that bald spot looking up there? Alright, Lord help me to not screw this up. Just a few more connections left. So for simplicity of the project, which is not simple at all, but for simplicity of the project, I'm going to have my fuse block and my supply connect directly on the back of the inverter. Are we going to see a spark? More than likely. Oh, that's good. Well, it's either really good or really bad. Oh, that's right, because the relay's closed. It's not going to send any power through. That's good. So we're to the final startup, I guess. I'm having flashbacks to the air conditioner test. To where you really hope that everything's wired correctly and you're not going to see sparks and stuff flying, because there's not a whole lot of easy ways to stop it if it does start freaking out. What does Andy in the off-grid garage say? Without further to do, because there's nothing left to do, let's see if it turns on. All right. Yes, ignore the mess. So there's going to be kind of a startup sequence on this thing. So this button turns on the BMS, which should turn on the display. I then activate the relay. You know, let me plug this in real quick. I wasn't going to, but at least we'll see it light up. So ignore the white cable. Let's just hide it a little bit. So as I was saying, this one should turn on the BMS. Once this comes on, this should light up. Then this should turn on. Once I activate the relay on here, it should allow me to power on the inverter. Once both of these are on, you should see the temperature sensor light up here. Let's find out if it works. Okay, so the BMS turned on. Oh, you know what it is? I might have disabled discharge and charge in the BMS while I was messing with things. Let's hope and pray that that's what I did. Because otherwise, if charge and discharge is turned on in the BMS, and that means there's something screwed up with the wiring. Solar, JK BMS, 8S, discharge off, charge off. Whoa. Thank you, Lord. All right, charge is just turned on. Here we go, discharge. Sweet! Okay. Now if I press the OK button, yes! Relay opened, you see power up there. Now press and hold. Woohoo! She works! That is awesome. I haven't tested this before. I haven't connected things up to see if it works. So, I'm pretty sure I need to calibrate this. I know I need to set my temperature to, well, I need to program this really because I don't have the over voltage, over current. I don't have anything set yet in this. But I know I need to get the individual settings and stuff programmed. Because it says that it's using 2 amps right now. 1.77 amps. And then it says 2.1 amps. So a little calibration's needed. Even the BMS says 1.9. Between 1.7 and 1.9. So it's close. It just needs a little tweaking. Voltage on the front says 13.10, BMS says 13.09, and we got 13.07 on the back of the inverter. So again, we're close. Just need some fine tweaking. Well, let's just dive on in and try a test, huh? I don't have any over current, over voltage, anything set. Well, let's plug the vacuum in and just see what happens. I won't run it for super long. 90 amps coming out of the battery. You know, I might have some overcurrent settings in the BMS. I do. Protection, discharge, overcurrent. And I have the battery set to 120 amps discharge. So it should come back on here in a few seconds. So there's going to be a lot of different protection features that I'm going to have to look at dialing in. The other thing I need to find out is, am I going to lose all my historical data every time this turns off? Because if I am, then I need to rewire a little bit so that I only lose that when the BMS gets turned off. But even then, I knew it was going to be a cheap meter, and as long as the BMS has the historical data, you know, I can just use this for basic stuff. But still, it's nice to see it working. A lot of little tweaking still. All right, so let's just go through. So we can set over voltage protection. Over power protection, over current protection. The middle one is output. I don't remember what some of these other ones are. I'll actually have to look them up. But then it'll show us the total capacity, 280. Power. I know the battery's not at 100%. Actual output, and it does not take into account the draw from the meter. Yeah, I actually have to look at the settings to remember how this all works, but to turn the output on, make sure the little yellow box is next to output. hit OK. And it's not even reflecting the power required to open the relay either. The BMS would show that. So you probably can't see it. But that little red light means that the fans are running. I actually feel quite a bit of air movement, which is good. That's what I want. Nope, doesn't like that. I don't know, that is pretty sweet though, knowing that it works. The only thing that I wish I had was a display on the front showing the temperature, because this doesn't. The BMS should, but this doesn't. Well, I'm happy. It's done. I mean, I've got a little cable management to do with the cable for this, and then I'll go through and figure out all the settings. And then the next video we will do a use case, some testing with it. I got to get out back and clean those limbs. When you have a horse and you try to ride it, they tend to try to find every low-hanging branch and scrape you off with it. So my wife would be very happy to not have to be on limb watch every time she goes for a ride. So that's going to be my big test, to take this out back and use my electric chainsaw and electric pole saw and try and cut up some of those low-hanging limbs. So I'm going to try and get the little cabling taken care of. We'll do an overall system review next time of capacity and everything. I'll make sure everything gets charged up. I've got to get all the little values set and pre-programmed so that we can run the test without it tripping abnormally. But then after that video, we got to move on to something else. So stay tuned, because I've got a handful of different things that I'm thinking about working on. We'll have to see which one kind of falls in the order of priority, I guess. With that, I'm gonna let y'all go. Y'all stay safe, stay cool, and we'll catch up with you later.